Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me today for another installment of Facebook Live. So, a couple of things right off the bat here. I want to acknowledge that I have a couple of different cameras, so I'm going to be moving my eyes in different directions to try to make eye contact with both cameras. And so I hope that's not too disturbing. I have Instagram Live going on my right and Facebook Live kind of right in front of me. So welcome everyone for my really, it's kind of exciting for me. My first Facebook Live that I'm offering back here in Thailand. So I arrived back a month and a few days ago. And so really delighted to be home in Chiang Mai. And if you've been listening or following my Facebook Lives, I started doing Facebook Live in March 2020 as a way of kind of hoping to help with the COVID crisis. And I actually did every day a Facebook Live session every day for over a year, about a year and a half. And then I tapered it down to a couple of times a week. And then I started offering online retreats because I found that this platform worked very well. And so now what I'm doing is offering about a month or 5 weeks or so of Facebook Live sessions once or twice a week, building momentum into an online retreat program. And so that's what I'm doing here today, really. I'm going to give a talk, first a guided meditation on the quality of equanimity. And then I do have a talk prepared that I intend to offer after the guided meditation. So the guided meditation will be a bit abbreviated, maybe 10 or 12 minutes or so, like that. So that's a little bit of a frame of today's offering. But before I get into the guided meditation, I just would like to speak a little bit about the online program that I'm going to be offering. And there are two. The one that I'm speaking about today is called Awakened Living, and this is a year-long practice, immersive, really. So it starts January 9th and it goes to December 20th. So we'll be going straight through the entire year of 2025. There's 4 semesters and there is a break of sometimes the break is almost a month long, sometimes the break is about 10 days long. The break is there to allow us to integrate what we've been studying. So we'll spend 12 weeks studying mindfulness of the body and breath, mindfulness of hedonic tones, feeling tones, and mindfulness of our mind and heart. So bringing that non-judgmental awareness to our experiences of body, hedonic tones, pleasant, neutral, unpleasant, and heart and mind. And in addition to the foundations of mindfulness that I just offered there, we're going to be exploring throughout the year what's known in the Buddhist tradition as the Eightfold Path. And in the first 3 months, we're going through just skillful intention and skillful view. So we're really taking just piece by piece some of the really foundational teachings of the Buddha, and we're going to look at those in a secular, non denominational, and trauma informed lens. And the reason for doing it over a year is that we're going to really emphasize bringing these practices into our day to day life. So, yes, there will be plenty of guided meditations and things like that, but the emphasis will be how do we manifest these teachings in our day to day experience so that they're not just something that we can think about, something that can be nice to quote on a meme that we might send around, but actually how these practices are developing and really improving our lives and the lives of those around us. So that's September, that's the first semester. The second semester starts April 23rd and goes to July 12th. And in that semester, we'll be taking a mindful view of what's known as the Dhammas. And those are the 5 hindrances and the 7 factors of awakening. I won't go through all of that now because that's a whole nother talk in and of itself. But just know that equanimity is included in the 7 factors of awakening. And so one of the reasons why we're looking at equanimity today is this is a fundamental aspect of these teachings, that quality of balance and non-judgment. So in the second semester, we're looking at the hindrances, 5 hindrances, the aspects of the human mind and heart that keep us from leading a flourishing life, that keep bringing our habits and patterns around and around again and again, what's known as samsara in the Buddhist tradition. So we'll be taking a look at that. We'll also be taking a look at the 4 noble truths. Life contains suffering. We suffer due to our craving and reactivity. There is a way of freeing ourselves from that type of suffering, and that freedom has a particular embodied quality that we'll be exploring. And then the Eightfold Path, which is really, all of the course is really a part of the Eightfold Path. So the third semester is a little bit different. It's an 8-week program. It's based on the mindfulness-based stress reduction curriculum, but it's really focused around widening our window of tolerance so that we can hold more and more challenging material without moving into reactivity. I'll be drawing very heavily on my certificate in clinical trauma and drawing a lot on the somatic experiencing school through those 8 weeks. So we'll be looking at a lot of somatic experiencing exercises and also, of course, some guided meditations as well that can help us to widen our window of tolerance. I'll be talking more about the window of tolerance today in the talk. And then the fourth semester, we're going to, again, circle back around to look at the hindrances, the factors of awakening, and really applying those to what's known as the Brahma Viharas, which are loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And there we see equanimity showing up again. And it's quite interesting, at least I find it interesting, that quality of equanimity shows up in almost all of the Buddha's teachings. And even the working definition of mindfulness that most teachers offer today is a way of connecting to the present moment with care and non-judgment. So even in the very basic working definition of mindfulness, we see this quality of non-judgment. So it's super, super important quality in this path towards awakening. So the 8-week course, the year-long course, let me give a little bit of a detail on that. There's 2 sections to cater to different time zones around the world. Section A is running from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Wednesdays and Saturdays. That's in Thailand time. That's where I am located, right? So please calculate your clocks accordingly. So 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Wednesdays and Saturdays in Thailand equals 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Tuesdays and Fridays on the East Coast of America. So you can go to Google and Google time conversion charts, and you'll be able to find your time zone there. I also have a link on my website where that you can click on that, and that'll convert your time for you. Section B is running from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. on Wednesdays and Saturdays. That's Thai time, my time, which equals 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. on Wednesdays and Saturdays, East Coast time. So again, do your math accordingly. Also worth noting, Thailand doesn't observe daylight savings, so when the clocks change in America and US, the times for the course will change for you, not for me and not for other places in the world that don't observe daylight savings like the Philippines and so forth. So each section, each voyage, if you will, they're all live. Nothing's pre-recorded, and I feel that really distinguishes my offerings from many of the other offerings that you'll find online. I don't pre-record any of the sessions, and I really try to speak to what's arising in the room. And so there is that container of compassion and safety that I really emphasize, and that I really work to cultivate in the community, the online community, like that. So although the sessions are recorded, the recordings are made available only to the retreat participants, and we do hold this container of confidentiality so people can come and speak as freely as they like. And that usually fosters an environment of healing. So, one of the great benefits of the course. Yeah. Okay. So I think I've talked enough about that. If you'd like to find out more information about the Awaken Living year-long program, please do go visit my website, suchsweetthunder.org. So I'd like to go ahead and bring us into about a 10-minute guided meditation on the topic of equanimity. Equanimity, remember, is this quality of non-judgment and balance. Non-judgment and balance. And so if you're not already, just inviting us to get into our most comfortable meditation posture. And some posture that can support our wakefulness and alertness and relaxed and soft at the same time. Feel free to change posture mid-practice too if you feel that would be supportive and helpful. So in a few moments then I'll ring the bell and I'll guide us in. So the invitation here is just to arrive into this present moment. And there are many ways of arriving and connecting to the present moment. And for this practice, let's start with the experience of sound. So we're invited here to simply become listeners of the present moment. So you might notice quiet sounds or loud sounds, the sound of my voice. There might be sounds generated by appliances or machinery, the gentle hum of a heater or a fan or an air conditioner, the occasional car or truck passing by or airplane flying overhead. And perhaps noticing sounds generated by nature, such as bird songs or crickets chirping, a dog barking nearby or a conversation unfolding. And some of these sounds might feel pleasant, and other sounds might feel unpleasant. But regardless of how we interpret the sounds, we might recognize how sounds are always present moment experiences. And as such, the experience of hearing can make a great guidepost back to the present moment. So if we notice our thoughts going into the future or the past, we can always reconnect to the present through the experience of sound. So just resting and listening. You might notice how there's no effort required. That sounds simply appear and they're noticed. And so we don't need to force anything or make anything happen. We can simply remain at rest, in a sense, holding space for any sounds that might appear and stay for a while and disappear. And if it's helpful, you might offer a phrase like, the present moment sounds just like this right now. The present moment sounds just like this right now. It's not better than, it's not worse than, it's not equal to any other moment. It's just this fresh, present experience. And then while we're here resting, noticing the soundtrack of the present moment, the invitation then is to bring awareness to the body and simply noticing how the body feels in this current posture, the areas of tension and softness, the areas of irritation and warmth, the areas of ease and tension. Not trying to change anything or make anything happen. Perhaps noticing the sensations of clothing resting against the skin of the body. From the bottom of the feet, if you're wearing socks, all the way to the shoulders and collar. If you're wearing a hat, the top of the head. Noticing the textures of softness or smoothness, coarseness or roughness. And equally noticing the areas of the body that are bare, that are taking in the temperature of the room, warmth or coolness. So this might give us a complete view of the entire body. And perhaps holding a phrase like, the present moment feels just like this right now. And again, not trying to make anything happen or force anything. This present moment isn't better than, it's not worse than, it's not equal to any other moment. It just feels like this. Noticing how sensations simply appear and they're known. They arise, they may change and shift and morph, and then they fade. The present moment is just like this right now. It's not better than, it's not worse than, it's not equal to any other moment. And then, perhaps in the next breath or two, the invitation is to bring awareness to our heart, to any emotions and feelings that might be there. Maybe a glimmer of joy or calm. There might be a ray of energy or a hint of sadness, perhaps. There's no wrong emotion or right emotion. We're simply noticing what's there, not trying to change anything. Knowing that however it is that we're showing up, it's just like this right now. These emotions are not better than, they're not worse than, they're not equal to any other emotions. It's just like this right now. And the present moment is just like this right now. It's not better than, it's not worse than, not equal to any other moment. And so in a few moments' time, we'll begin to shift away from the guided meditation and back into a conversational space. And I'll cue that by ringing the bell 3 times. And if your eyes are closed, you might just gently begin to open them and start to reorient yourself to the room around you. One way of reorienting is if you have a nice piece of artwork nearby. As you can see, I have a couple of meaningful pieces of artwork behind me. I also have a few in front of me as well. But you may just look at the artwork and kind of breathe it in as a way of reconnecting the external world to the internal world after a meditation, particularly like a meditation like that one. We tend to get really quite internally focused. So it can be quite nice just to take some time, even if you don't have some artwork, nearby, just looking around the room, taking in the shadows, the shapes, the colors, and so forth. Yeah. So I want to tell a little story here as a way of kind of getting into the topic of equanimity. Bumping the mic there, sorry. And this is a story of a monk named Hakuin. Hakuin was a monk in the Japanese Zen tradition, and this would have been in the late 17 or early 1800s. And Hakuin, at this time in his life, was really well respected. He had a lot of disciples and students and things like that. And wasn't uncommon for his hut to be filled with students and people listening to his talks and so forth. And so he was living in this village, and the village, his little hut, was close by to a food shop that was run by a couple and their young daughter. And one day, the parents of this daughter discovered that their daughter was pregnant. So the parents got really upset and really angry. They felt she was too young to have a baby and to start a family, so forth. And so, in their anger and frustration, they demanded from their daughter, "Who's the father? Who's the father?" And at first she was reluctant to confess. But after much harassment, the young daughter said, "Hakuin. Hakuin is the father of the baby." So the parents, furious parents, went running down to Hakuin's hut, banging on the door, berated him in front of a room full of students. Could you do this? How could you be so irresponsible? You're supposed to be a pillar of ethics for our community and so forth, right? And he simply stood there and said, "Is that so? Is that so?" As their words landed on his ears. And he compassionately took the baby in his arms and raised the baby as if the child was his own. And so by this time, after a year, 2 years, the word got out that he'd impregnated this woman and was taking care of this child. He was the father of this illegitimate baby, and so his reputation was sullied greatly. He lost a lot of his students and disciples and so forth. And Hakuin remained equanimous. Is that so? Is that so? And he took delight, it said in the text, for caring for this infant child. And he was able to obtain milk from other people in the villagers and other essentials and so forth like that. And so after a year or two of raising this baby with great care and kindness, the young mother of the child became super disturbed in regret and confessed the truth to her parents that the real father was actually not Hakuin, but a sailor who worked at the local fish market. So as you can imagine, right, the mortified parents went running back to Hakuin and apologizing, really, begging for his forgiveness. And they actually asked Hakuin to return the baby. And although Hakuin had come to love this child as his own, as they requested the baby to be returned, he simply smiled and said, "Is that so? Is that so?" and offered the baby back to the parents. And it's just such a beautiful story in and of itself. And it's, a koan. It's often meditated on in many traditions, particularly the Zen tradition, but many Buddhists will take this story and sit with it and contemplate and meditate on it. And for me, this story really speaks to the crossroads of compassion and equanimity. Right, and so that's kind of what I want to speak to here, and I'll try to tie what I'm going to offer back to the story as well. But it's sometimes said, and I don't know where I heard it originally, but our equanimity is incomplete without our compassion. That equanimity without compassion turns into indifference very, very quickly. Right? Because equanimity is that quality of being with our experience without judgment. Without judgment. But what often causes our frustration, our pain, our suffering is our judgments about the situations that we're in. Right? It's often not the situation itself, but our resistance towards that situation that brings us to suffering. Not always, for sure, not always, but very often. And so it can be quite tempting in the spirit of practice or in the spirit of awakening or the path that we're on, whatever that may be. It can be quite tempting to just be like, oh, I'm not going to feel that because that's equanimity. Right? And so this is where compassion takes a front seat. Compassion allows us to open our heart to the situation that we find ourselves in, even if it's very challenging. Right? And so how that might work, I'll relate it back to the story here. So the parents, bringing this newborn baby to Hakuin, right, banging on his door, berating. Hakuin probably felt very, very upset and very challenged by that. But able to meet his own disturbance with compassion. Oof. So how that might sound for me, I automatically go into it, but I might if somebody, came to my door holding a baby, saying it was my baby, banging on the door and saying, berating myself in front of my students and so forth. Whew, wow, that's really challenging to hear. Wow. Right? So offering myself compassion around the pain of the situation. Ooh, this is really tough right now. Can I be with this in this moment? Can I hold space for this challenge? Right? What would be helpful? Right? Maybe a few deep breaths. Maybe hearing the bird songs, connecting to the present moment in a way so that I'm not immediately cast into fight or flight response. Right? And then, how can I serve this present moment? Right? This baby needs to be cared for. These parents and grandparents don't want to do that. Right? So again, compassion for the baby, compassion for the child. And then moving forward with that compassion and equanimity. Right? Equanimity doesn't mean saying okay to what's external at the expense of what we're feeling. Can't overemphasize this. Right? Because that's just papering over the cracks of what's happening internally. Right? That causes a type of repression, and that repression, when we repress our feelings and our emotions, those feelings and emotions will continue to control and dictate our behavior in our life. So we meet what's arising internally with that non-judgment. Oh yeah, this is tough, this is challenging. Right? Not that I don't want to feel this way or they shouldn't be doing that, right? Because they are doing that. And I am feeling this way. Right? So we meet what's arising with that non-judgment. And then we hold space for that arising with compassion and care. And in that space, we move forward to help. Right? So in the guided meditation, I offered the phrase, not better than, not worse than, not equal to. And you might try this as you're listening to me speak right now. What happens in your body when you listen to that phrase, not better than, not worse than, not equal to? This moment Whatever is happening in this moment. Maybe you're bored. Maybe you're listening to me and you're falling asleep. Not better than, not worse than, not equal to. It's just what's happening. It's just here, right? And so you might notice how, if you'd like to explore this, how I like to explore this is to, this is leading into a bit of another practice, which I could speak to, called bearing witness, where we just show up to an experience without judgment. And as we connect to an experience without judgment, compassionate action springs forth by itself, whatever that might look like, right? So how I like to do this is lately with the news. And I like to read the news. I'll open the CNN app and I'll turn that on and just read some of the news, and just offer that phrase. Well, first, before I open the app, not better than, not worse than, not equal to, and I'll repeat that over and over again for maybe 5 minutes. Maybe I'll even do a type of meditation that we just did. Then I'll open the news and just meet what the emotions are. Right? I'm not saying what's happening in the world is not better than, it's not worse than, it's not equal to, but how I'm feeling about it. Because that empowers me to move forward with clarity of mind and heart. Right? If I'm moving forward for social justice through the lens of what I think should and shouldn't be happening, very likely that movement forward will be laced with anger and frustration and sadness and upset. And any movement forward that's laced with those qualities meets an equal and opposite reaction. We can totally see this unfolding in the current world crisis of division, right? So if we can meet, not what's happening externally, but our own feeling about the situation in that frame. It's not better than, it's not worse than, it's not equal to it, because each moment is a new and fresh moment. Each moment, although this present moment might look very similar to the last moment, it's a new moment. I need a sip of my blend of coconut milk and pineapple juice, the joys of Thailand. Yeah. So, not better than, not worse than, not equal to. It's just that sip, just that taste, just that flavor of the moment, right? And the Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, we can't step into the same river twice, right? Because new water is always flowing into that river. And it's just the same way with the present moment. We can't inhabit the same moment twice. Just with every breath, our body changes, our mind changes, our heart changes. Right? And with some mindfulness practice and meditation, we can really start to ride the changes, surfing the changes, if you will, in that quality of non-judgment and compassion. Yeah. Well, we covered a lot of ground there, so I think I might draw our time here to a close. So I will be back here. I'm going to do a couple of these a week. I'll probably be back around Monday or Tuesday, depending on my schedule, but I will be posting on Facebook. I usually give about a day's notice before I do one of these. The other course, by the way, if a year-long program sounds like a long program, too long to commit to, I get it. So there's also a 3-month program on mindful communication and skillful speech. And as I mentioned in that talk a little while ago about the political division, and one of the reasons why I'm offering that course is I think this is so needed right now. we've forgotten how to disagree and respect at the same time. And so a big portion of that 12-week course on mindful communication will be focusing and practicing disagreeing with each other with love and compassion and care. Yeah. So the next talk I give early next week will be focusing on that topic. Yeah. So I think I'll ring the bell to close us out. Thank you. Thank you.